wholeness comes from the inside out.
When we're living congruently with our values, there's happiness because there is that sense of wholeness.
Wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being.
In this episode, we are focusing on the Enneagram Type 6, the Loyalist. If you are a Type 6, listen up and you will learn a lot about yourself. For the rest of us, we will experience times where we relate with a Type 6. We all have all the types within us, but the Type 6 hits every mark. They create an art out of the Type 6. If you are in a relationship with a Type 6, it's really important to understand how they work and how you can best support them. So listen up and we will get started with this type. I take all of the information from a couple of different sources: Richard Rohr's Enneagram and Enneagram Empowerment by Laura Miltenberger. I will keep this book in the show notes so that you can get a copy and learn for yourself about what type you are or what all the types are about. It's a great resource. To learn your type for free and get more information, go to michellewinkel.com/Enneagram. There's a link there to take the test, and then if you send me your type, I'll send you a packet with some different information, different than what I'll share on these podcasts, to let you know a little bit more about your type. And lastly, before we get started, July 13th is coming up quick, and we're going to have our online book club and discuss Bittersweet. You don't have to have read the book to be part of the conversation. The conversation is more about how this new normal can feel better when we embrace the idea of bittersweet. So I hope you'll join us. There'll be a link in the description for that as well. So let's get started with Type 6. Some famous Type 6s are Marilyn Monroe, Jennifer Aniston, Julia Roberts, David Letterman, Tom Hanks, and from The Office, if you know and familiar with The Office, Dwight Schrute. That character is considered a Type 6. They are the Loyalists. They are passionate, cautious, loyal. They are strategic, caring, intuitive. They're anxious, they're dependable, they're devoted, and skeptical. So 6s see the world through security and threat. I'm either safe or not safe. They are very careful about where they put their trust, and their main motivation is to feel supported and secure. But they also look out for others as well and can be very loyal and steadfast. In the book, she calls the Loyalist the Advocate, and I think both names are great identifiers for this type. 6s are usually team players, and more than any other type, they will have their eye out for the common good. They're looking out for everybody, and they spend a lot of time playing devil's advocate or, trying to figure out and study before they make decisions. And when they make that decision, when they become loyal to a cause or to a person, they will defend it. They will stand up for that almost at any cost. But they're driven by fear that they won't have the security or guidance they need, and they might have some self-doubt. They may be vigilant, they may be skeptical, and they're often in their heads analyzing and planning future events. This might show up as a lot of worst case scenarios or worry or stress. 6s might say things like, I'm a caring person and a steadfast friend. I worry about the future. I take things seriously and I'm a deep person. I'm 100% dedicated to the causes I commit to. Decisions are hard for me. I'm always worried I'll make the wrong choice. Troubleshooting is second nature to me, and I often play the devil's advocate. I am very passionate about the people and beliefs I care about. It's hard for me to turn my brain off and just relax. A lot of people say that type 6s are the most common Enneagram types on the planet at this time. That's an opinion, but it seems like an opinion that a lot of people share. So take that for what it's worth. Type 6s are motivated by safety and security. They want guidance and support. A lot of times they put a lot of their faith in authorities, people outside themselves, and they look to people to give them answers. They are motivated to feel calm and choose the right path. Those things will motivate them. If there's something I can check off so that I can put that off the list and not worry about it, that's going to be a motivating for me. If I can reduce anxiety or stress, or if I can invite calm, that's going to motivate me to make choices as a type 6. Some of their key fears are that they will be scared or unsure, and that they might put their trust in the wrong place, or that they might make a wrong choice. And their obstacles that they need to overcome are worry and anxiety, self-doubt, and maybe like half glass empty or negative outlook kind of way of thinking. A lot of 6s have reported that they could never develop this primal trust because they had uncontrolled or maybe unpredictable, violent or cold parents. So sometimes mom's in a good mood, but you never knew what kind of mood she was going to be in. And 6s say that maybe they might have been punished for things that they didn't understand the reason for. Maybe their parents kind of blew off some steam at them in a way they couldn't yell at their boss, so they kind of offload onto their kids after work or when they're home. They might have had to look for a protector, maybe an older sibling, maybe the other parent, but they relied on this person to kind of support them and give them a heads up. They also had to be aware of signs of approaching danger so that they could figure it out in time. All this, it's like you're looking for mom's mood and what she's going to do, and then they felt like they needed to be prepared for that and was tuned into making sure they were aware of her attitudes or anybody's attitudes that might have felt dangerous or aggressive to the type 6. Some considerations for growth for type 6s are to start developing self-trust. Sometimes when you wish you were braver, what you actually need is to trust yourself more. Remember the times you've leapt and landed on your feet. Celebrate times you've made a choice that was a good one. Make note of the times you felt scared, but still made it through. Make small promises to yourself, like, I'm just going to drink 1 glass of water this morning, and then praise yourself when you do it, and keep that promise. This will help you build self-trust so that instead of asking, am I brave enough to leap, you can tell yourself, I can trust myself to land. Another consideration is make room for ambiguity in your life. Not all questions have answers, and most decisions have more than one right option. But that's okay. What's important is that you're living the kind of life you want to live along the way. This is something that you need to open up the possibilities. I've talked about that before in other podcasts. To open up the possibilities and just to say there's one possibility, the thing that's showing up. That's one possibility of an outcome, and open it up to some more choices so that it just allows you to calm down and not get fixated on this one way. We are always sure something's going to happen, and maybe that's true, but if we can calm down, we're better apt to finding more solutions. Another growth is know that even if it is uncomfortable, it's okay to have worried thoughts. You are bigger and more powerful than your thoughts, even when they feel overwhelming. When worried thoughts come to your mind, take a few steps back and just observe them for what they are. You are not your thoughts. You are you, and your thoughts are just something that you experience. we'll talk about later, this is in the mind triad, and they are in the middle, so they get double dose. So that mind is always kind of going, maybe even racing. Another consideration is to find people in your life who will ask you good questions versus giving you answers. Lastly, find activities that help you calm down, get out of your mind and into your body. A lifetime of experience is ingrained in you, but you must start paying attention to your body, your senses, your sensations, your feelings, in order to get in touch with confidence and wisdom. When you become aware of your body and the sensations that you most of the time and what they mean, whether that's warmth or a sensation of tingling or even pain, and understand what that means for you, then it's easier to read the world because your body is telling you what's going on. So it's super important to move from the mind down into the body. So type 6s, remember, motivating fears are that I will be scared or insecure or unsure, and I will put my trust in the wrong place, and I will make wrong choices. These are the motivating fears, and they can come up with these types of negative thinking. For example, type 6 might say to themselves, that turned out to be a good decision for me, but that could have just been luck, right? Instead, turn that into an empowered thought or empowered thinking by changing it to, it turns out that I made a good decision. I weighed my options and made a good choice. Another example of some negative thinking that might come up for a type 6 is, it was a good first date, except for the fact that I got nervous and asked the same question twice. They probably thought I was listening to them and just didn't care. There's no way they're going out with me again. So this negative, like nitpicky on the self, this inner critic. Instead say, I was nervous and I asked the same question twice. They might have been annoyed by it, or they might have thought it was funny or cute. Regardless, most of the date went really well, so this one detail will most likely be insignificant. Lastly, another negative thinking example is, I ate there one time and got sick because the fish had gone bad. You just can't trust seafood restaurants. An empowered thought for a type 6 in that case would be, one seafood restaurant serving expired fish does not mean that all seafood restaurants serve expired fish. This is like saying that just because one book I read was boring, all books are boring. Type 6, it's really easy to just feel like if we categorize something, we can put it out of our mind and off our list, and we don't ever have to deal with it again. And that's kind of the motivating factor, is it's like, I learned that lesson, cut it out, or take that out and not doing that again. And it can cause some problems because it stops us from discovering, it stops us from moving forward, and it can keep the 6s really confined, or because there's this belief that that's all bad, then there's deep in the psyche, it's like things are bad, right? It can kind of create these false belief deep down a couple layers, because we've, like just with the seafood scenario, it's like seafood's bad, and then down deep, if somebody's eating seafood, they might feel some anxiety in their body, or their mind might start to race. An empowering question type 6s can ask themselves, what are some possible positive outcomes? What are the other things, expanding and moving out and trusting a little more? Some great self-care tips for a type 6 are for emotions or the heart. Go stargazing, climb to the top of something high and admire the view, or go somewhere new to watch the sun rise or set. Cultivate a sense of awe. Even as I say awe, the word awe, when you're just sitting there and looking out and in that state of awe, you just naturally take that deep breath and feel calm and at peace. And that's super important for a type 6. It's really easy for type 6s to have that anxiety like we've talked about before. So find ways to calm down in a way that's supporting to you. Another self-care is to cross your arms over your chest and give yourself a big squeeze. Create a playlist full of songs that represent all the different emotions you've experienced in the past month. Add some songs that represent the feelings you'd like to experience more often. a type 6 can often, like we talked about, be in their head. And when we're in our head, when our thoughts are just running, it's a lot of anxiety. I've talked about this before. I was shown this idea of, I was in a therapist office and he was asking me to think about my thinking. And he said, imagine you were home painting a project in your house and you were all alone, the family was gone, and you finished for the night, went upstairs, got in bed, and you heard a crash. And the first thought that came to your mind was, somebody's breaking into my house. What would you do? And in that scenario, I thought, well, I'd jump under the bed, maybe call the police. I'd be scared, right? I'd immediately be afraid. And he said, okay, same exact scenario, but that first thought that just went through your mind was, I must have left the door open, or I must have left a window open and something, the wind blew something down. Sometimes that first thought just jumps out at us and we don't really think about it. Of course, it just jumps out. It just happens to be what pops in our mind. But if the second scenario had happened, I would have done the complete opposite. I would have gone downstairs, looked around. I wouldn't have had that feeling. The thought made all the difference. And 6s, like we talked about, they're in the thinking trine, right in the middle of the 5 and 7. And so they've got a double portion of that mind. So sometimes their mind will be thinking, and then they're trying to think about a solution. So it's like there's this kind of internal crash that goes on. And the mind is there. The brain has a job to keep you safe. And its idea to keep you safe is to record everything that's negative or bad or dangerous in any way, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and keep record of it so that anything that comes close to that triggers this anxiety to say, stay away, or this feeling to say, stay away. And it's really easy for the mind to just be afraid, to have some anxiety, to worry. It's like kind of its job. But if we can move into the other emotions, or the other bodies, the emotional body, the spiritual body, and down into the physical body even, it can help support that. So 6s, it's a great idea to practice feeling your feelings. A self-care for type 6s for the body would be, when you eat, after you eat, and later in the day, ask yourself, how does this food make me feel emotionally, physically, spiritually, meaning what meaning do I give to it? What connections do I have with it? Maybe memories, that type of thing. And pay attention to that. Another self-care is to use exercise as a way to release nervous energy from your body. And then, this is important, so you got to move your body to release that energy. When there's anxiety, energy it's kind of like a shot of adrenaline. And if you just have to sit there and be still, it can be maddening over time or cause long-term issues. So we need to push that energy out of the body through movement, right? But very important at the end is when you're done, to ground yourself, to bring yourself into the present and calm back down. So don't just run as fast as you can and then be done. Take that extra few minutes to just stand. Maybe either outside is a good place to ground, walk around outside in nature, or imagine your feet. Just imagine like some roots growing down from your feet and grounding you, or look around the room and ground yourself in the time and space that you are at by looking at things that you can see, maybe things that you would be able to taste, things you'd be able to smell, things you would be able to feel, and just so that you're grounded in that moment. To finish your exercise with that. The last self-care for the type 6 is, for the body, is to do a 5-minute body check-in. From your feet to your head, notice what each part of the body is feeling in and around it. The breathing going in and out of your nose, the weight of your eyelids, your heartbeat, your breath. The body scan up and down, what's happening there. Notice the sensations, whether they're painful or pleasurable, and really be in that body. For the mind, This is a great self-care tip. Keep a self-trust journal. Write down the good choices you've made, even the tiny ones. Write down the promises you make and keep, the goals you meet, and the routines you stick to. Also, practice taking small emotional risks to increase your comfort with discomfort. Eat a food you've never tried before, or tell an embarrassing story at a party. Remember that courage is cultivated. We're not just going to absorb it one day and pretty soon have courage. That first time is going to feel so threatening. The first time you venture out, move beyond your boundary, push yourself and expand, risk, is going to feel like 100% painful. But then the next time it's like half as much. And then the next time it's half as much that. And then pretty soon that anxiety is no longer there because we're used to it. Trust me. The first time I recorded a podcast, all those anxieties were there. I didn't know what I was doing. It was awful to get in front of people and talk. But over time, that's become so much easier for me. Even public speaking, which is one of the most scary things for human beings. If you do it, then that courage is cultivated and the anxiety goes away. Lastly, for the mind, for every negative outcome you predict, brainstorm 2 positive outcomes. We don't know the future. When that future comes, and if it's a terrible thing, then we're in problem-solving mode. It's so different to future predict, to not know for sure. Sometimes we feel like we know for sure. But once that trouble is here, it's just so different if we can trust that. So if we could just, when we catch ourselves predicting terrible things, to just stop and give ourselves 2 possible, even if they're tiny percentages of possibility, different outcomes. And it just helps the brain to train that part of the brain to not look for danger maybe everywhere, right? It's going to start to say, hey, possibilities are there. The wings of a type 6 are 5, the investigator, and 7, the enthusiast. The 5 brings balance to the 6 by really investigating. So a lot of times the loyalist, the 6, will have, like we just talked about, all these ideas in their head about what's going wrong. But the investigator, first of all, remember we talked about they are disconnected in a good way. They know how to disconnect from the anxiety, but they also know how to investigate and really do some research on what other things could happen. They're going to look and study and grow. And the 7, they are also they're still part of the mind or the thinking trine, but their wisdom comes from their mind. But they are very happy-go-lucky, actually. They are glass half full type people. So a very good balance for the type 6 who might see everything as a glass half empty. This is the fear trine. So remember 4, 3, 2, shame. 5, 6, 7 are fear. And that's what they're trying to overcome, is fear, future, not knowing for sure about things. That's going to disrupt a type 6. When a type 6 is in stress, they are going to look a lot like the type 3. And they might just start checking things off lists. They might feel like they've got to achieve things, or that they don't matter unless they're achieving, or that what their status is. And they might start really comparing themselves to others. And they can look to the type 9 as a great peacemaker, as a great way to calm down. The type 9 is optimistic and more gentle, and they can look to that type 9 to bring in some balance when they are stressed. When the type 6 is in their egoic state, they may look passive-aggressive, they may be paranoid, they may be fanatical. Sometimes it's really easy for type 6s to get involved in conspiracy theories because they're okay with taking outside opinions and making them true. They don't know as well, especially in the egoic 6, to look inside. They kind of trust outside authority more, so they'll believe what they're told. They can be self-destructive. They can be defenseless. They just are doormats, maybe. They can be inferior, and they can be persecuted. On autopilot, type 6s look to authorities. They may be evasive. They may be skeptical or resistant. They might be suspicious. They might be divisive or fearful. But as we move and learn about ourselves and what makes us be who we are, what's brought us to this place, the type 6s can become enlightened. And in this state, they can be self-affirming. They can be dedicated. They can be interdependent. They can be a positive thinker. They can be courageous, affectionate, and very cooperative. A great enlightened 6 can make a big impact on the world. A type 6 might interact with the other types in this way. So a 6 with a 1, those two together they're going to be president and vice president of the PTA, or they're going to want to be very activist and wanting to change things. They're going to feed off of each other about what is right and defend what is right. The 6 and the 2 are kind of like a mother-child relationship, and the 6 might love all that the 2 is willing to help them with and give them lots of authority. Maybe the 2 might overpower a 6 if they're not careful, because a 6 can look fearful and anxiety, but sometimes that fear and that anxiety is not always wrong. It's a clue, and they're the ones that are going to say, hey, well, we didn't think about this, and hey, this is important too. And so that fear and anxiety is going to, it's a hint, it's a tool for the type 6 to say, hey, maybe we're missing something. If there was a room full of people and we needed to make a decision, that 6 is going to come in handy by playing that devil's advocate and seeing things from a perspective maybe the rest of us aren't looking for. Again, the 3 and the 6, the 6 moves into the 3 as a stressor. So they might look a lot alike. The 3 could have a lot of power over the 6 because that stressor is going to, once we're in stress, the 6 is going to want to turn their power over to someone else, and that 3 is willing to take it. So that's something to look out for and be aware of. The 6 and the 4, the 6 is so loyal and about the group, and the 4 is so much the individual and protecting themselves. Some friction might happen there, or they might just not meet up. They might just not live in each other's circles very much. The 6 and the 5 are wings, so they're going to see each other. 5 and 6, there's a lot of mirroring going on there. They can identify a lot with each other. They can give each other pieces that the other one doesn't have, but they're going to be very similar. Some 5s might think they're 6s, 6 might think they're 5s. They might recognize a lot of traits that are similar. The 6 and the 7, those and the 6 is worry. The 7 is not worry. The 7 is going to, where the 6 is trying to think of all the things that could go wrong, the 7 is going to do everything in their power to not think about those things. They're going to, maybe even in a negative way, push things away and not think about things, where the loyalist is overthinking. So that's causes maybe some friction, or, if we're in this egoic or the autopilot stages, right? Those two can kind of have some friction if both of them are living in not in their enlightened selves. The 6 and the 8, and again, this is, I think a lot of 6s will look at 8s for authority And because the 8 is going to go out and protect the underdog, and the 6 feels like an underdog in some time. So there's another parent-child maybe relationship or type of dynamic that goes on there, and to be aware of that as a 6. And then the 9 again is where that 6 goes for calming, to empower themselves, is to kind of embody some of those type 9 qualities, maybe become a little more flexible or be adaptable. Those are some qualities of the type 9 that go a long way for the type 6 to calm down. It kind of feels counterintuitive, but if the type 6 tries it, if they can try being adaptable, or they will see some calming or some relaxation within themselves. So that is the Enneagram type 6, and we will see you next time, type 7. We invite you to the wholenessnetwork.com, where you'll find the Wholeness Library. Inside, you'll find tutorials, downloads, mini classes, and all sorts of streaming content for you on your wholeness journey.